so excited to finally have the one and only Dr. Aumatma on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I don't think we've ever done a full episode on fertility. And if I'm going to have any expert on this show to talk about it, of course it's going to be you, the one and only, the one who's like got all the protocols figured out, the success rates through the roof. Like I am completely enamored by you and I'm so excited to pick your brain.
Thank you. Well, I feel the same about you in so many ways. So I'm honored to be here.
So before we get into it, everyone's going to want to know, like, who are you? How did you get into doing what you're doing, especially focusing on fertility? Because fertility is a big topic. And like
Mhm.
libido, I feel like it's one that's not really discussed a lot. I think a lot of women
Yeah.
feel shamed by having infertility.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we take our fertility for granted. And I have so many thoughts on fertility, but we're gonna dive all into it. But before we get into it, just let us know who you are and how you got doing what you're
Yeah.
doing.
So by training, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm board certified in naturopathic endocrinology, and I have a bunch of certifications for mind body medicine and all of that. But while you were saying your question, I was thinking like, actually, it's kind of ironic that I ended up in the fertility field because I grew up in a very religious Indian household that believed and like reiterated over and over again that the minute you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. So like I have never shared this ever. So here we go. Um, for I basically did not have sex for the first 27 years of my life. And that's rare, right? Like not too
Mhm.
many people go into, but it was like I grew up with this. I grew up with like so many religious things going through my head. So it's been a journey to like come back to my sexuality and empower myself and realize that fertility is not as easy as everyone makes it seem.
Mhm.
Religiously, culturally, we grew up with that, but then also the same message in school, right? Make sure you have
Mhm.
use protection, birth control, use protection, da da da. And sure, there's reasons to use protection, but those don't have to do with the fact that you're instantly going to get pregnant. So I think this like fear that we get put into us when we're young, that the minute we have sex, we're going to get pregnant. So then we walk through our lives like, oh my God, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant. And and then like the minute that we're ready, then we're like, wait, why didn't it happen? Why isn't it happening? Like, why is it
Mhm.
taking so long? And literally every cycle feels so long because there's only like such a small window that we can actually get pregnant, and B, we have to wait another 30 days before we can try again. So it can feel a little bit like weird because now we're in this completely new world. We don't talk about fertility that much
Mhm.
leading up to the time that we're ready to conceive. And then again, like I said, as soon as we're ready to conceive, we really believe that it should be instantaneous. So I feel like, it is a little ironic that I got into this field because it wasn't the plan at all.
Well, and I know I love how we all come to what we're doing today because I feel like, yes, we have the expertise education wise, but like all of that life experience that you had and all that conditioning, I mean, it just that speaks even more than how all your certifications and everything, right?
Yeah.
Because you've been there and you've done it. And it sounds like, and you just raised awareness here of another, like we fear fertility. Like we are
Yeah.
conditioned to fear our fertility, like right from, and I grew up in a Catholic household, same thing. Like you don't have sex unless you want to have a child. And when, the one time you do, you're going to get pregnant. And like, so you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to have sex. And, until I want to have a child. And then we're, like you said, we were like, okay, let's plan it. Let's stay on birth control until the last minute, get off the birth control. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm ready. And it's not happening. Right.
Yeah.
Month
Yeah.
two, not
So
happening. Month
wild.
four, not happening. It's like, then we start to think we're broken because we're like so
Right.
conditioned to think, right, that like month 1 or maybe month 2, if you know, at least by month 2
Right.
you're pregnant. And then when it doesn't happen, it's like, what's the matter? What's the problem?
Right. And then juxtapose that with the medical world that literally says, we're not testing you until 12 months of trying if you're under 35, or 6 months of trying if you're over 35. So by the time women get to 6 to 12 months, they're like really messed up in the head around like, is this me? Is it my fault? Am I broken? Will this ever happen? Like all of this is in our faces, and the amount of stress that that creates is tremendous. And like honestly, the number of times I've told women like, let's just go get you tested, even if you have to pay out of pocket, it's not going to be covered by insurance, it will still be worth it. And they come back with these results and I'm like, listen, your hormones look great, let's give it a few more months. And 100% of those women come back like, you took this pressure off, you reassured me that everything was fine, and I'm pregnant. That's all I needed. So it's like I also find that so many women are afraid to get their hormones tested. They're afraid to know. They're like, oh, I don't want to know if something's out of balance, out of whack. But in reality, like you might be getting information that just like puts your mind at ease and you can relax, or you realize that something is out of whack, in which case it doesn't make sense to keep trying and trying and trying till it doesn't work anyway. So it's like either way, I feel like testing is really, really important, and doing it sooner rather than later. And really, like in the long scheme of things, my dream would be that we make hormone testing as accessible and as normal as pap smears, right? Like we do a pap smear once a year, get your hormones checked once a year. It's not that big of a deal. And that, I feel like that should be the standard of women's care.
I love that. And like that way women can make a more educated decision as far as, you know, the timing, and even not only that, like the expectations of how long it might take, right? I feel bad for all those women. And I was actually on a just in another interview and it was off recording that we talked about this, but how many women out there that are put on the birth control pill because of irregular menstrual cycles, like whether it
Yes.
be PCOS or what, or even closer periods, maybe they have endometriosis. And, you know, and I can say this because this used to be me as a gynecologist. I would put these young girls as young as 16, 17, 18 with period issues on the pill. And of course, she walks out the door going, yay, my period's going to be better. Fine. Right. And they are. But then
Yeah.
10 years later, she wants to have a baby.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I'm going to go off the pill and get pregnant. Now, meanwhile, if I had told her 10 years prior that, you know, just make a little mental note that, and I never want to instill fear, but like just maybe get off a little sooner, or maybe things have like corrected themselves. But how many women are out there like that get thrown out a pill at a young age, really love the convenience of it, then
Mhm.
decide, get married, have, you know, okay, now it's a good time to have kids, come off. And like, you know, you probably question them, like, why were you putting on the pill? Oh, my periods were irregular. Oh, ding, 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 ding. Right.
Right, right. Almost always. It's like, well, if your periods were irregular, first, it's probably going to take extra time till your periods come back online after
Mm-hmm.
getting off of birth control. So a lot of women will call like frenetic because, oh my god, I got off the pill and I don't have my period, it's not come back, it's been 3 months, it's been 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, that's not abnormal. Your
Mm-hmm.
periods were irregular before you got on the pill. The pill literally like disconnected your brain from your ovaries. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
take a little time to get this reconnection going.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might need to put in some energy and some effort to get that get the systems back online, as I call it, just to
Mm-hmm.
have everything flowing and working. And then once your period comes back online, more likely than not, it's still going to be irregular.
Mm-hmm.
So you still have work to do before you are going to go and get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
But not women aren't told this when they're given the pill. And I know you're like, you're reformed. So I can say this. It's like the pill isn't solving our problems, right? The pill is like kind of putting a cover on it so that we don't have to look at this for the next 10 years. So it's a bit unfortunate, but I do, I feel like it's, on one hand, the pill is amazing because it's done so much for women's health and women's empowerment and sexuality and all of that. And then at the same time, it's like, well, we just started using it as a band-aid, and I don't think that was the intention.
Yeah, I like to say, yeah, I'm a reformed gynecologist, definitely. And the other thing I have to say that in my defense back in the day, like I loved fertility and half the time, I won't say half the time, many times it was just about educating. Women don't really know their bodies. They don't know that there is this
Yeah.
little window. Like they thought they can get, like, when are you trying to get pregnant? Oh, like right before my period. I'm like, whoa, you're completely missing the boat, right? Or like
Right.
during my period or what have you. And it's like
Right.
sometimes it was just educating them on, and now they have all the fancy apps. Back in the day, we had to actually talk to patients and to like draw out things and such.
Yeah,
And so number one, knowledge of their cycle and their female body was huge. But
absolutely.
I would say, like, if a woman ever came into me and said I was put on the pill for period issues back in the day, I had a little bit lower level of suspicion as far as, oh, it might be something going on. I wouldn't torture her by waiting a year. I generally would let them like try for 6 months back,
Mhm.
like again, back as conventional GYN, but I
Mhm.
would have a little more grace on them and say, okay, 6 months, let's check things out. If you're trying at the right time, bring me in your cycles and we'll try to determine if there's something wrong. But the other thing I didn't, we as regular GYNs don't do is like address that whole stress component, which can be huge when trying to get pregnant. So you you practice holistic fertility. What exactly is that?
It's essentially root cause medicine applied to fertility. So, in the way that I was trained, but even more so with fertility, I feel like fertility is not really a diagnosis. Infertility is also not a diagnosis unless it's technical infertility, which means you absolutely cannot get pregnant. There's genetic issues, there is um, uterine anomalies, something that is going to prevent you from ever being able to get pregnant. Sure, let's create a label called infertility for that population. But the majority of people that are given this infertility diagnosis don't fall into that bucket. So in my practice, we don't actually use the word infertility ever. Women come in and say, oh, I've had infertility for 3 years. And I'm like, no. So you've been unable to conceive for 3 years, but you're not infertile. And they're like, oh, what? Uh, so right off the bat, we have to change how we're thinking about it. But on the technical level, it's really, fertility has so many underlying things. There are a lot of things that need to click into place in order for the body to be able to conceive. And it like, I was talking to someone yesterday and she was like, it's kind of amazing that we even have children on this planet. Like, it's amazing that babies are created. And because there's just so many things that could be in the way, there's so many things that have to like click into place at the right time in the right way in order for pregnancy to occur and then for that child to be carried to term. So it's like, I have a lot of like gratitude and a lot of like appreciation for what our human bodies are able to do. But from the holistic perspective, I really want to know, what is it that's standing in the way of you being able to get pregnant? So if infertility is not a diagnosis, it is a symptom of something deeper, then what is it that's deeper? What is standing in the way? And I want to make sure that we've looked at every component of it. The reason I ended up with the term holistic is because when I started in this field 10 years ago, the number of times I talked to women who had struggled with fertility, yet their partners had never been brought in to consult, never tested, never like even considered as the potential cause or the potential like portion of, you know what I'm getting at. Like, come on, the sperm have to be tested. I'm sorry. Like, let's just keep it real.
It takes two.
So
It takes
it
two.
takes two. So to really like go through and feel like that the male partner is not that important, is only the sperm donor. As long as the sperm are fine, he's fine, but never really looking deeper than that. And for me, it's like I see both people as equal contributors, and it doesn't matter if the sperm are great. There's times when the sperm are great, but the woman keeps having recurrent loss, and it's on the partner side, it's not her. So it really like it holistic goes so much beyond the basic foundation of like it takes egg and sperm, but really it takes the whole human. It takes the whole human partner and the interweb between the two of them to create this child. And energetically, there's been times when I look at a couple and I have my woo side. So everything is usually science. Yeah. Everything is usually sciencey, but I don't tell them the woo side. But I will look at couples and like see energies, and I'm like, energetically, from what I'm perceiving, which is only my perception, these two people together are not meant to have a child. And if I get that hit right off the bat, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't work with you. Like, you're not a good fit for me. I'm going to refer you somewhere else. And they'll like, I've literally had people cry when I tell them that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's just, I can't do it. Like, it's probably not going to work. I don't tell them that.
Yeah.
But it's like energetically, I'm sensing like this couple is not a match. And I myself, like, part of what got me into fertility was I was married to this man, and he had started talking about having children, and literally my reproductive organs would like squeeze and crunch and like just close off as soon as he mentioned babies. And I was like, I'm really not supposed to have a child with this man. And like it was a little bit of a shocker because I was married, but I was like, I'm not going to bring a child into this world if it's not with the right person. So like, I've been through that process myself. And part of what got me into fertility was like, well, I'm already in my 30s. So if I don't do this with this man, what am I doing? And really like brought into question everything. Like, can I get pregnant later? Is my fertility going to drop off a cliff at 35? What's going to happen if I leave this person? Will I ever find someone else who I could potentially have a child with in time to have a child? All of those questions were really present for me. And that's like how I like dove into all the research with fertility, and like really just came out of it with like, wow, there's just so much that research tells us that isn't getting translated into what women are being told, what women are being offered. And we need a change. Like, this needs to change. So that's how I ended up in this field.
And it's so powerful because, as I'm going to go back to saying what I said in the beginning, like we all get into like your personal conflict, energetics, even like, yes, you can recognize it in another couple, but you physically felt it yourself. Like, oh my gosh, I'm with this man. But then the realism of like, okay, my quote unquote biological clock is ticking. And how many women are out there that are in a relationship that they are like, I just don't feel like this is it. him, he's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling the pressure, the societal pressure of having a kid before I'm AMA at 35.
Yeah.
And so they just have a kid for a few reasons. Number one, the biological clock, but number two, like, is that going to save a relationship? Because a lot of women think, oh, if I just have a child, that's going to be like, it's going to keep him or going to make us happier or whatever. And that's usually not the case. But I'm like, I feel like what you just said will speak to so many women out there that are like feeling that number one pressure because of their age, but number
Right.
two, in a relationship that may not be at the right, and not to say that's never going to happen with that person, but like maybe they need to
Right.
do a little healing of the relationship
Right. Right.
before they
Yeah.
get to that point
Yeah.
and not force the issue. So,
Yeah.
and a little
Absolutely.
spoiler alert, you do have a child now.
Yes, I
Because
do, with
the
the right
listeners are,
person.
yeah, the listeners are gonna be like, oh, does she have one? Does she have a child?
Yes, I ended up leaving that relationship and literally like met my now husband 3 weeks later. Everyone in my life was like, this is a totally rebound relationship. Please do not do this. And but I knew it was real and he knew it was real. So it took us 5 years of being in relationship to get to the point of, okay, let's have a child together. But we were really clear from the very beginning that we wanted to be together, that it was like, it felt right. It was like I needed the first marriage to really like show me my stuff and
Mm,
and like get me into the calling that I had to like serve the world with fertility support. But then on a deeper level, really it it brought me so far into my masculine energy that I needed to like experience all of it and realize that that state was not going to help
mm,
my hormones. It wasn't going to help my
mm,
fertility. So I did a lot of healing work to A, leave that relationship, and then B, like heal all of my crap to be able to like be in the present relationship.
mm,
And even my husband, when I met him, he was like, he didn't necessarily say masculine or feminine. I had already been aware that I was super in my masculine energy, but he was essentially like, listen, you have way too much on your plate.
mhm.
I don't think you have time for a real relationship. So when you
Wow.
get your shit together,
Oh,
give
oh.
me a call. And I was like, what? Who is this man? Like, who are you to call me on my stuff? But he, he's like really, he is super energy aware, even though he doesn't
Mm,
necessarily use the words. He's like, you work 80-hour weeks. Like, that's not functional. You don't know how to slow down. You don't know how to like be and like take in and receive. So, like, all of what I think is feminine energy, like he has helped me like step
mm.
more and more into. So yeah, it
I love
that
that.
yeah.
And
I'm
it's
like,
okay
I
if he
don't
doesn't have
know.
a if he doesn't have the word for it. Like he recognizes like the more the
Yes,
flow versus like the go go go, the very
right.
the masculine. And I've also in the last few years reconnected more with my feminine and not the type A go go go, like
Yeah.
do 100 hours a week and like can't learn enough, can't know enough, can't do enough. Um and very regimented versus like I'm tired and it's okay to take a day off. It's okay not to work 12 hours today and just,
Yeah.
more of what being feeling it in my body more than just like the routine, the
Yes.
regimen, right? Which is
Yeah.
super important. And I think what I'm hearing here is that, like here's a holistic fertility conversation, but we're talking a lot about energetics and about like being present in our bodies. Like so many women divorce what's going on in their body. And like it's just a
Yeah.
vehicle. It's just like a method of getting pregnant. Like, okay, very rote. Like, what do I have to do? What are my hormones? Like,
Right.
and there's such a deeper level to this, isn't there?
Yeah. There is. There is. And I feel like that. when that transformation happens, I know that I've actually done my work,
Mhm.
right? It's like most of the women that I work with are complete badasses. But what comes with being a badass is the 80-hour work week, super
Mhm.
stressed out, not able to relax, doesn't know what it means to like ask for help and get support,
Mhm.
right? Like all of those things are very subtle, but they're essentially like the disconnect between the top half of our body and the bottom half of our body.
Mhm.
So we think like, oh, everything that I am, oh,
That's
did
okay.
that cut out?
No, you're good. You're good. Your voice didn't cut
Okay.
out.
So everything that we are doing for fertility is how do we reconnect this part of
Mhm.
our body to the lower half of our body
Mhm.
versus um another approach that may just be so focused on hormones and how do we control your hormones and how do we fix it
Mhm.
and get you pregnant, kind of like you said, like using your body as a vehicle. But and that approach can work,
Mhm.
and that's okay if that's what people choose. There's no judgment.
Mhm.
But at least I feel like who the people that are drawn to us are the people that are total badasses, but realize they want to do it differently, right? Like I realized when I was working 80 hours a week that something was going to break. Like my hormones were totally out of whack. I like lived with migraines, chronic, like there was a point in my life when I just had a migraine, like a 12 out of 10 pain
Mhm.
for 9 months straight. Like it did
Mhm.
not go away.
Wow.
Um, so for me, like it was something is really has gone left.
Mhm.
And if I don't figure out how to work on my stuff, like this is not going to happen for that much longer.
Mhm.
So I really believe that fertility, when fertility is an issue, it really helps us to not only address the body is super important. The body has tons of things happening, hormonal imbalances, toxins, gut health, thyroid health, you know, like we name it, you name it, we have seen it.
Mhm.
But outside of the body, how is our mind? Like, what is our emotional state? How do we feel in our bodies? How do we feel in our lives? The number of times that and this is not because I told them to, the number of times that I've been working with women and they just realize like, hey, my job is no longer where I want to be and what I want to be doing, so I'm going this other direction. And they come to this on their own, right? Like I'm not sitting with them and being like, you need to quit your job because that's what's keeping you from getting pregnant. I don't actually believe that's always true, but it the fertility journey and really like this new spirit that wants to come to us is calling us into higher states of being.
Mhm.
And if we're able to listen, if we're able to learn from what that message is, then it's helping us move closer to our deeper purpose. And that's what I think is so beautiful about the fertility journey is like it's really an opportunity for us to go deeper, to do things differently. If it wasn't for the experience I had with my ex-husband, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have done anything differently. I would still probably be working my crazy 80 hours a week and having no boundaries, saying yes to everything and everyone, and like wanting to be the support for everybody, but not realizing that that was like depleting all of my energy.
Yeah.
and and like now if I look, you know, did I know that I would be living this life now? No, totally not. But to now be a mom of a almost 4-year old, to get pregnant way later in life, geriatric pregnancy,
Mhm.
go through all of that, and to have learned at least some things that I can be like, oh, I understand what it feels like to be in my feminine. I understand what it's like to flow. And then I understand, like, I recognize when I get out of those states,
Mhm,
and I have more choice. And it
mhm,
doesn't mean that masculine is bad or feminine is bad. It just means that I have the ability to choose.
mhm,
And the more I feel like I'm in my feminine, the more I feel like I'm serving in a deeper way and I can like really make a difference in the world.
mhm. And so for the listeners, she's a total badass, by the way, in the fertility world, total badass. So like just to say that, going, having that choice of how you feel and not spending 24/7 in that masculine, in that go, 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 which did not serve you. You were still a badass and killing it. Like it doesn't say like, oh, well, I'm more in flow. That means I don't do anything. No, she does plenty, but
Yeah.
she's not her nervous system's not always in that fight or flight, right? You're not always like because
Yes.
you do appreciate a balance in the nervous system as well. And again, I agree. There's times for masculine, there's times to go, go, go. And there's definitely times to sit back and like, okay, it's a little too much time to get back to me and be present in my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do think a lot of women that are more in that masculine, the go, go, go and regimented, and they are disconnected from what is going on in their body. It's just,
Yeah.
like they don't even know how they feel. They don't know like how foods react to them. They don't know much. It's like when you bring them
Right.
back to their body, like, oh, I've had that for a while. I just didn't even notice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And same, like I'll just say, like, I remember this. So 10 years ago was when I started fertility. 10 years prior to that was when I was starting medical school. And even back then, I remember some of my friends in class were like, "You sigh a lot. Are you like stressed?" And I was like, "Me? Stressed? No, I'm cool." And like it took me 10 years to realize, like, yeah, actually, that was stress.
mhm,
And yeah, I do sigh a lot if I'm stressed. So we have these like subtle indicators that are happening in our bodies, but we're never really taught to be connected to our body.
mhm,
And we're not ever taught to be connected with our uterus and ovaries.
mhm.
So when we support our clients, we're really supporting this reconnection. And people like get off the table and they're like, whoa, that's what my uterus feels like. Like I can feel it. It's like a weird experience, right? And I've went through this myself. Like everything that I tell my clients to do, I've done on myself. So I had the same experience. I was like, whoa, like what is this thing that I'm feeling? And to have the experience that we can actually like feel all of the different parts of our body, and that we can also be tuned in to the point of like, oh, I just had that food and now my joints hurt and it's a reaction to the food. So getting in connection with what it is that is really affecting us negatively
Mhm,
so that we can choose differently.
mhm,
I think we have it in our within ourselves. And um for me, like my job as a support person, as a guide on this journey, is really to help people see that for themselves, right?
mhm,
I've had clients or patients that have been with me for 10 years, but not for fertility, obviously, but um, those clients, they're growing incrementally throughout that whole process.
mhm,
And we really have the possibility that we don't need to spend years and years and years with someone to be able to help them see and do these things for themselves.
mm. I love that. I love that. And so I think we're bringing just awareness of like how well-rounded it's great to pay attention to every part, body, mind, spirit, when we're trying to
Yes.
assess our fertility. And the last little comment before I ask my next question is, I think we as women too are so conditioned to hate our uterus and our ovaries, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we are conditioned to hate our periods and our monthly
Mm-hmm.
cycle, right? Like from a
Mm-hmm.
young age, it's like, oh, anti-flow is here, and oh, like here goes the worst week of my life, and like
Right.
so we inherently are just like cursing our reproductive organs from a young
Mhm.
age. And then again, we want to go on the pill to cover it up. It just,
Yeah.
so many women just want to go on the pill for convenience sake.
Right.
And it's just like, I think reconnecting to our femininity and to the, like our body and our organs, and just the miracle, the fact that we have a uterus and ovaries that can like produce babies. Like I had two of them inside
Mhm.
me. It's like amazing.
Yeah.
I always tell my husband, I love being pregnant, and I just, the human body is incredible. And I
Yeah.
never took one day of my pregnancy. I was like, I love being pregnant, like
Yeah.
growing little beings, but I never took it for granted, because I was like, this is a blessing. And it's just, it was a blessing for me not to get one, but to get two, and to be able to conceive them was just
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah, and to like even on the fertility journey, like so many women are like, "Oh, I got my period again."
mm,
And they're frustrated that they got their period. And like my husband reframed this
mhm,
to that's a sign that you can get pregnant. And I
mhm.
was like, oh, that's such an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so it's, it's hard. I get it. It's hard when you've been struggling for a long time with fertility
Mhm.
to like, oh, great, another cycle.
Yeah.
But to remember in that moment that, yes, this cycle also just means that my body is doing what it's supposed to and is
Mhm.
cycling the way that it should. And the blood is actually like really like a sign of my fertile time to come.
Mhm.
Um,
I love that. I love that
yeah,
reframe, because you're right. If those that are listening and don't know, when you get your period, it means you're not pregnant. So all those women out there trying to get pregnant every month, and maybe working with Dr. Aumatma, gets her period. It's like, oh, it didn't happen this month. And so
right,
I get that, but I love that reframe of just like, okay, this means I still can get pregnant, right? Like
right.
you don't get it and you're not pregnant. That's maybe a little more to look into, right? It doesn't mean there's a
Mhm.
problem. There's maybe something more to look into.
Yeah.
So